Good morning and welcome to year 2005. I was in a hurry, so hurried that I went back in time to try to get some time before I have to leave for 2 months on Monday to India. So in a frenzy to buy some time, I dated this as 2005, you know. So anyway, let us begin. We will begin with the opening recitation. If you have the recitation book, go to page 1. You are certainly invited to join us in the chant. But if your voice is, you want to reserve your voice, don't feel like you are forced, to go along. Most importantly is to hear these words, but don't think too much about what it means. Just hear these words. Let these words kind of sink in, and just basically, the mind needs to be. It's best. Let's put it that way. It's best if the mind is just relaxed and not trying too hard to understand even. Just let it be, Then, however, it arises. Nathan, help. Sean, get rid of that plant and put a chair there. Yes, the plant can go somewhere. It's not like you can't have any chairs there. I'm just saying don't put a single line all the way to the back. To be fair, they know I have a very particular way of wanting things to be. But then, because of that, common sense sometimes flies out the window, trying to divine what I want. What I want is people can see, people are not all the way back there. So that's the principle we are seeking. Generally, in every space I go into doing programs, I don't like the orientation to be like here and all the way back. I like it to open to left and right in every space. That whole, really long. It's like you're sitting in the back and you can't hear, you can't see. Not very helpful. All mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness and be separate from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect precious Buddhahood, all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially me who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path. Liberation and all nations, may they experience happiness and be separate from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All Mother sentient beings, as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path. Liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness and be separated. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I inform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I inform virtuous deeds, speech, and mind. To the top of page 6. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent. Take refuge until enlightenment is reached. Merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain for the sake of all sentient beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent. Refuge until enlightenment is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. For the sake of all sentient beings, may all Mother sentient beings, as the sky, have happiness, and the causes of happiness, may they be liberated from suffering. Causes of suffering, may they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, attachment, and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, and the causes of happiness, may they be liberated from suffering, and the causes of suffering, may they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the attachment. May all Mother sentient beings, loveless as the sky, have happiness, and the causes of happiness, liberated from suffering, and the causes of suffering, may they never be separated from the happiness. Sorrow, may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So these recitations are actions of bright karma. We have just finished a series on the Buddha's teachings on karma. And in that book, what's often translated as good and bad karma, is translated as bright and dark karma. I think good and bad karma has certain, how do you say, comes with a certain amount of baggage when we, especially in this religious, even spiritual context, as much as you keep reminding people, it's not good and bad as moral judgment, but because, right, when you look into it of what is called good, what is called bad, it often aligns with how the way we have understood religion in the past, and perhaps even to some degree rejected those understandings. It seems to align. So then instantly we get into that mode of good and bad karma. Instantly we get into the mode of thinking rewards and punishments. Instantly we get into that framework of deserve or don't deserve. Worthy or not worthy, all of that, So here in this book that we've been working with, and we finished that, but the next few Thursdays there will be group discussions happening here around that book. That booklet is readily available as downloads. It's called Kamma. So karma spelled with two M's, K-A-M-M-A. Kamma and the end of karma. You can easily download it. So in that book, the author, the teacher, that is the source of that book, uses this expression, bright karma. So bright karma is the kind of karma that brightens things, that clears the darkness, clears the tightness. There are actions of body, speech, and mind, actions that we can take, to make things bright, to make the room bright. So first of all, the room inside can be bright. So when we wish upon all beings happiness and the causes of happiness, the end of suffering and the causes of suffering, don't just verbally say it, Let the heart dwell on the implications of, everyone having happiness and the causes of happiness, be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Now, don't follow the habitual stories that we tend to create around this. Meaning, it's not the time to go, well, just wishing that, would it happen or not happen? Don't we need to do more things to make it happen, And la 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 la. That inner critic, that voice sometimes can get so loud. That inner critic is not the problem. It's not bad. We all know how many times we have been rescued from doing very stupid things. Because that voice is present, But sometimes that voice gets out of hand. When it continuously wants to kind of complicate things. These days, it is very busy wanting to complicate things. Why? In part because now we know so much. Now we know so much. And I think we have worked on the assumption that the more we know, the better. The more we know, the better. But that kind of knowing creates more thirst of wanting to know more. Then when we run out of the range of things that you can reasonably know, you make up things to know. Right? You make up things to know. So then speculation comes in, then, suspicion comes in, then conspiracy comes in, because you've run out of normal things to know. Right? But then this insatiable thirst, which, as educated, right, as broad-minded people, we think, you should know more. You should know more. And more, and more. Then we just grab whatever we can. Then it reaches a point where you have kind of reached a limit, right? You run out of things to know. Reasonable things, made up things. So now what do? Oh, let's go to like totally unreasonable things. Then suddenly everyone around you like, wait, what happened? Oh, because you ran out of things to know. You ran out of things to fill your mind with. Now you're going to fill it with completely unreasonable things, or at least what you previously thought to be unreasonable, suddenly crystal clear. Except people around you like, should we intervene or not? But that's what's happening, I think, to many of us because of this unchecked assumption that knowing and then using this knowledge to critique everything that comes in. So that even like in cases where, for example, there's a saying in Tibetan, don't over decide and under investigate. Generally, that's a good advice to have. Don't over decide and under investigate. But now we have to investigate everything. And then that inner critic voice comes out. Then what is very clearly, simply when I say is bright action, bright cause, which is what karma means, literally, cause. And cause in the sense of action. And in the sense of intentional action. Not just any action, but actions that have clear intentions behind. Not clear, sorry. Actions that have intentions behind them. But often these intentions are muddled. We may believe that it is clear, but often it's muddled intentions. But actions that have intentions driving them is karma. And karma becomes cause. So these recitations at the beginning sets the tone, inviting us into a space of bright karma. And so we say, all mother sentient beings. Why are they mother sentient beings? Mother here connotes kindness. Or all parents, whether biological parents, parents that raise you, parents in the more broader sense of the word, those who have guided you, those who have nourished you, those who have cared for you. By the way, don't need them to be perfect. Don't try to make them perfect. Don't adjudicate the past and say they were so good this way and so bad that way. That's not the point here as well. Right? We have all met parental kindness, one form or another, and we are to see all beings everywhere as kind to us in that way. And then towards them, may they have happiness, may they be free from suffering, and may they swiftly achieve the state of being awake, of being free. We wish this upon them, and then turn around and say, and what can I do about this situation? What can I do to bring them to that place? it is too for ourselves to wake up from this confusion, to wake up from these delusions, to become awake, to become what we call Buddha, which is what, these images here are various ways. Some you are more familiar with, some maybe you are unfamiliar with. The one in the center, probably you can all recognize. Oh yes, that's how they represent this ideal. These persons, not just one, but these persons that are awake. And the template for representing persons awake, necessarily grounded in the historical person that lived 2,600 years ago. And that's the most common, right, device, you could say, to communicate an awakened person. And may we all awake like him. May we all wake up like him and become free like that person. And then later Buddhist traditions found other ways to express that. And other forms came into use. And this weekend, our program is anchored on the form of a goddess, you could say. Insofar as we call her a goddess, that means she doesn't have historicity in the same way that Siddhartha Gautama, more or less you could place him in history and say he lived 2,600 years ago in northern India, in the Gangetic plains around that area, in ways that you cannot literally place this figure Tara. And even her name Tara means the savioress, the one that delivers, the one that rescues, the rescuer. It's her name. And her name is also linked to a star in the skies that ancient Indians depended on for direction. I don't know if it is exactly the pole star, but it is a star, the name of a star that travelers in ancient India would look at in the sky and then get their bearings as to where they are. So Tara also carries that connotation. And in fact, as we will see, that is the real meaning of Savior in this tradition. A reference point. In this tradition, we don't have the super saviors that other traditions have. That can, jailbreak you and take you to a better place. So, if you're looking for that, not available here, sorry. Across the street, I think, is still available. Some of the buildings have turned into something else, like restaurants or, sound bar. That one, I think, is still a Christian church. But anyway, we're not competing. I really, these are different modes of us figuring out, how to be better people, how to be more comfortable in our own skin, how to be good for ourselves and for others. And different people have to find different ways of being that. Yeah? So these recitations, then the next one it says, and to that end, I will engage in virtuous deeds of body, speech, and mind. Bright actions of body, speech, and mind. Virtuous, bright actions of body, speech, and mind. I will bind myself to that. Why? Because what we don't like, according to the Buddha, what we don't like, what we cannot stand, what we cannot accept, meaning all the things that our heart has labeled to be unpleasant, unacceptable, miserable, suffering. Yeah? All those are the results of actions done in the past. The past could be the past minute, the past moment, the past day, the past year, and in fact, we even talk about past lifetimes. So while there's a lot of value, I would argue, and we can argue, but not this morning. We don't have that much time. While we can argue, whether is there really multiple lifetimes in the past, but I would say that you don't have to take that literally. Fine if you want to take it literally. But even if you take it literally, you should not so quickly say everything here has to do with some mysterious things that were done then, and in some ways you kind of like, and I didn't know I did it, why I have to face it now, not fair. Like quietly you're muttering that, even though you're like, oh, must be my past karma. Usually it's past karma in the last 5 minutes. But we would rather not see that, because whatever happened in the last 5 minutes, right, that led to this uncomfortable situation, usually has nothing to do with me. That's what we believe. And always has everything to do with everybody else that is not cooperating, and therefore making my life difficult. The Buddha says, that's not how it happens. That's not how suffering turns up. That's not how happiness turns up. Happiness and suffering turns up based on the principle of causality. At most, other people provide what the Buddha called conditions. Conditions for what? Conditions for your seeds of happiness and suffering to ripen. But if there are only conditions and there are no seeds, therefore no cause, then they cannot, nothing would ripen, nothing would turn up. So others only provide conditions at best. So actions, are the chief determinants. But of course, actions as chief determinants are not so clear-cut either. I think sometimes we get superficial about this and we say, be a good person and good things will happen to you. Oh, if bad things happen to you, you must be a bad person. And then if you are not careful, right, then it turns into, some version of prosperity gospel, right? That and some version of certain ways of thinking, where if, and I can tell you, it doesn't only just exist in the Christian world, in Christendom. Some idea that if God is on your side, if God is happy with you, you will have your perfect American life, or medieval European or whatever, right? Even in Buddhist lands, people can take that rather superficial understanding. We're not saying that, In fact, I think we have to be fair to say kings and people in power, historically, like in Buddhist lands, in some ways have found a certain version of the teachings on karma to be very convenient. Right? Well, why am I in power? Ha ha. I was good. You were bad. So these teachings on karma, if you don't kind of take them the way that I believe the Buddha taught very clearly, it's not about that. you have to really remove it from the context of deserve, not deserve, worthy, not worthy, rewarded or punished. But see it as, maybe see it as the way that a scientist would look at causality, right? Causality in that way, that it's nothing personal. Certainly not a judgment. But if we don't understand that causality, we'll get all jammed up and entangled and then bent out of shape. When you get that way, right? Let's say you're repairing a television. Some of you remember doing that. These days you just toss it out and go get another one. Some of us remember that, or remember dad or somebody at home doing that. Right? Let's say you try to repair your TV, and because you don't understand how it's done, and it gets all jumbled up, right? I think you won't sit there and go, I didn't deserve this. Right? It's not a matter of deserve or don't deserve. Right? It's a matter of, well, I thought I had enough knowledge, but I don't. So now it's a mess. Right? Let's see if all the pieces are still together, and let's drive it over to the shop. Maybe someone can help fix this. Right? Yeah, so here, karma lies at the heart of what the Buddha taught, but be careful how you understand these teachings on karma. And in a way, this weekend, we are looking at this topic, but from a particular perspective. From the perspective of freedom from fears. And today's focus is on this pair that turns up together. So often we say, oh, I want to be free from fears. I live in a fearful state, and I don't like that. Right? The Buddha says, yeah, of course. But then very quickly the Buddha also says, but fear don't just stand on its own. Everything is dependently arisen. That's another point, key point. Karma is also about dependently arisen. Everything is dependently arisen. Everything happens or turns up in that way. So for fear to be present, its partner needs to cooperate. And its partner is hope. Yeah. I'm sorry, all of those of you who have a T-shirt from the Obama years, hope. Yeah. That hope, right? Yes. Is the other side to fear. We're not saying, you become incapable of telling the difference between hope and fear. Right? That's not the goal. To be enlightened is not to lose the ability to tell between someone is experiencing hope or experiencing fear. Not that for sure. Also not you should live in a state where you can't tell the difference between hope and fear. The point here is not so much even about that at all. The point here is, can we always remember how fear has its partner, which is hope. And therein lies our lives, between these two poles of hope and fear. Right? It's not saying destroy one, promote the other, or even equalize the two, but rather what it is saying is maintain clarity about how hope turns up, how fear turns up. Then in the midst of hopes and fears, we don't need to be dragged around. We don't need to be dragged around by these hopes and fears and not understanding how these two reactions to experiences turn up. So today we want to look at this from this angle. Then it's all anchored on a particular expression of beyond hope and fear that is embodied in this figure that I've already mentioned, Lady Tara. And so if you look at this handout, so Tara, literally her name means the deliverer, the rescuer, the savior. And then particularly Tara is said to protect us from the fears. And a text that I have included in here is protecting us from the 8 types of fears. And it can also be translated as the 8 types of dangers. So it's a particular set of dangers that resonated with Indians. This is where this originated. And so these 8 types of dangers that a typical Indian person would face in their day-to-day lives. And it said that Tara has the power to protect us from these dangers. So to start with, there is a level of relating to Tara among Buddhist cultures that have this figure. And they're mostly now, just in case you're wondering which Buddhists I'm talking about, clearly Tibetan Buddhists. And under that, we actually include many other people, which is all the other groups of people kind of in the Tibetan cultural and literary orbits, meaning they use Tibetan language as their classical language. Just like how Latin, right, was at the heart of European kind of cultural elites, right? So in the same way, Tibetan, classical Tibetan. So this includes like Bhutan, Mongolia, and areas now in India such as Ladakh, and these mountainous areas. They all, in that form of Buddhism there, Tara is a prominent figure, historically and until now. Then of course in Indian Buddhism, before Indian Buddhism disappeared from India, died out, there was a period of time where Tara was an important figure. So there's a lot of archaeological evidence of the devotion to Tara. Then in East Asia, this figure of Tara takes up a different name, but you could say that it's the same principle, which is the figure of Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin is often said to be the East Asian interpretation of the East Asian translation of what is a male figure in India and in Tibet, which is Avalokiteshvara, and it's said to be Kuan Yin. But in terms of like you could say that the texture of Kuan Yin is closer to what Tibetans would call Tara. The gender of Kuan Yin is actually ambiguous in East Asia, deliberately so. But at a certain point in the life of Kuan Yin in East Asia, clearly a gender assignment occurred. Around 13th century, Kuan Yin turned female. For that, Kuan Yin was ambiguous, male or female, unclear. Then 12th, 13th century onwards, Kuan Yin is unambiguously, in China at least, becomes a mother figure, a mother goddess. So affectionately, people, including myself, my family, we would refer to her as Niang Niang. And Niang is also the word for mom. So Kuan Yin occupies that heart space in East Asia, the same way that Tara occupies that heart space among Tibetan and Himalayan Buddhists. So the image of Tara, as you can see, if you're in the temple here, this painting here is Tara, and she has this green color. Her body is a little unusual. But actually, the description of Tara being green in color, the Sanskrit word is Shama. Shama, though yes, it's green for sure, but it's a particular hue of green that often paintings don't paint her that way. And it's the green that you see in the monsoon rain clouds. So it's more like blue-green, bruising blue-green, black. Blue, green, black, all around there. But artistically, I think people just see green, and they forgot that, even in Sanskrit, there are different words for green. This particular green, is the rain clouds, monsoon rain clouds green, which is really more black, blue, green. And the connotation there is also that. So for people who live in monsoon climates, they know the power of this rain when it rains down. It's like arrows being shot from the sky. And so not connoting pain, but swiftness. How quickly and in a way, how fiercely it comes raining down from the sky. So Tara has this connotation. Often she's called the one who is swift to act, fast to act, quick to act. And so, in the lives of Himalayan Tibetan people, when in danger, especially, immediately they call out to Tara in the very same ways as Catholic cultures would call out to Mary. So there you have, a figure very similar to Tara. And some of you may have noticed and probably wondered, like, oh, that's kind of interesting. If you go down the hallway, there's a tapestry of the Lady of Guadalupe in our hallway. So the many faces of this principle, the many faces of Tara, as the savior, as the liberator. And there are a few stories in different Buddhist sources, in the different sutras and tantras. They give different accounts of how Tara came to be Tara. One account has it that maybe you could say, they're all mythic. Here, the word mythic doesn't connote false, but it's trans-historical, right? It evokes a primordial past, so to say. So all the stories of the origins of Tara, to some degree of the primordial past is invoked. In this one story, it said that Avalokiteshvara, the great being most recognized for this embodiment of compassion. So it said that Avalokiteshvara, this great being, this great bodhisattva, made a vow, made a promise that he will do everything and for as long as it takes to free all the beings from what we call cyclic existence, confused existence. And so he went about doing that. And then when he finally finished the task of emptying out once and for all beings, led all of them to the state of enlightenment, Buddhas. Then he turned up in the presence of his teacher, according to this story, who was this Buddha called Amitabha. So he went to Amitabha and he said, "Mission accomplished." And Amitabha said, "And what do you mean?" He said, I've done it. My vow to liberate every confused being from cyclic existence. And Amitabha said, "I don't think so." I say, and Avalokiteshvara says, "What?" And Amitabha said, "Take a look." And so it says that he looked down, down into the state of confusion, and it's all filled with beings. So, okay, the point of this story isn't that he helped all of these become enlightened and then they became deluded again. Yeah? No, but it's just what he has moved over is only a fragment of the infinity of beings caught up in a state of confusion. Yeah? So it said that in that moment, and there's two ways of telling the story. Yeah? There are stories and versions of stories, right? But stories are told to point to a truth. Yes? So these are what the myths are doing. In this version that is particular to Tara, it said that then Avalokiteshvara cried. And it said that Avalokiteshvara, a tear came from one of his eyes, and when that drop of tear fell on the ground, it turned into a big lake. And from within that lake, a gigantic lotus blossomed and unfolded. And from within, Tara appeared. And Tara said to Avalokiteshvara, "Don't give up. I will help you." Then it said that from there, thousands and millions of Taras appeared. More lotuses appeared from this lake that came from a drop of tear of Avalokiteshvara. And many Taras appeared and say, "We will assist you." So, Tara then is the active principle of compassion. For every tear that Avalokiteshvara shed, it wasn't just a tear of sadness, but it was a tear that turned into this active principle of delivering others from suffering. Swift action, quick action, effective action. So sometimes Tara is also called the mother of all awakened, enlightened actions. So what are enlightened actions? What are awakened actions? They are nothing but actions that effectively benefit others, bring happiness to others, deliver others from suffering. And so all those actions are what Tara is. So that's one telling of the story of Tara. This one, you could say, places Tara in really like primordial time. Because the figures involved in this story are the great figures in Mahayana Buddhism, Avalokiteshvara, kind of a timeless being, Amitabha, another kind of timeless being. Right? There's a second story to Tara, equally known, equally loved by those who venerate Tara. And this second story, you could say, is not so set in mythic terms, but nonetheless is placed at a time like in human history said to be, 20 billion years ago in this particular world, in this particular city, in this particular town or this area, there was a young woman who heard the Buddha of her time teach and became so inspired that she then spent her life practicing what that Buddha taught. And beings apparently, or you could say humans, during that time period in that world had lives that are infinitely longer compared to ours. It said that they live, up to like at least 10,000 years or some figure like that. And so it said that she spent, most of that time practicing those teachings until she arrived at a state of development where she will no longer backslide. So it's a particular level of maturity spiritually where you no longer backslide. And then she came in the presence of her teacher, the Buddha, to kind of give a report to her teacher that through your guidance, through your teachings, I have arrived at this state of irreversibility. Okay? And when he did that, it said that one of the teacher's monks, so this is the original mansplaining, he decided to come to her. I think she was called Beautiful Moonlight, I think her name was something like that. And I think she was a princess, something like that, okay? So he came over to her and said, wonderful, wonderful. You have achieved this great merit, right? Now what you should do is, in the presence of the Buddha of our times, make this vow, make this resolution, because this vow, this resolution will come true through your own effort and through the presence of our teacher. You should make this vow and say, by the power of what I have achieved, may I be reborn as a man, so that you can be rid of this unfortunate existence as a woman. Now, I don't think it's fair to call this monk sexist, because what the story is telling us is how people perceived life as a woman, right? You tell stories that make sense to your audience, or make sense on some level to your audience. They recognize that, I remember when I was in graduate school, one of the professors who taught, she specialized in Hinduism, and she said, and in one class in graduate school where we were learning about, gender and South Asia, and she said, before we start this course for the semester, first thing everyone needs to understand is the life of an Indian man today is way less free than the life of an American woman. Way less free. He's not free to make all kinds of choices. So keep that in mind, and then we start the semester. And so it reflects really, you know. So anyway, there is a point to, I mean, whoever crafted this story also wants to make not only a statement that makes sense to the people, but also a challenge. All right? So how does this story unfold? So then the monk tells her, you should do this. And she said, oh, okay. Then she said, okay, I'm going to make a dedication, a vow now. And she said, because of confusion, and one of the forms of confusion is to be fixated on the difference between male and female. That fundamentally, those are qualities that are temporary. But because, she said, in this world there is this kind of fixation, and then by implication, male better than female, at least in the context of what she was advised to do. And she said, from this lifetime on, until I achieve the state of Buddha, I will always take a female body. So she's making 2 points. Like you could say, in the ultimate, designations of male and female has no meaning and is based on delusion, based on exaggeration, based on confusion. The ultimate point. But because now the world is biased against female, I'm going to come back from lifetime to lifetime as female. But there's also another kind of, you should also hear something else, right? So this is not just about issues of gender and issues of, discrimination and issues of all of that. It's also emphasizing that she is saying, yes, I'm recognizing that it's a lot harder in this imperfect world where things are stacked up against women, but I'm not going to give that up for an easier way. It shows also her resolve. She said, I'm not going to take the easy way out. There's an equivalent to this sentiment, which is, there's this idea that, or this teaching, this whole approach of like, making a vow that at the end of this life, may I be born in what's known as a Pure Land. The idea of a Pure Land is that this is a place where it's easier to practice the Dharma. There's less distractions. You can make great progress sooner, faster, more effective. And so generally, that's kind of the pattern. If you accept such an idea, then you would do all your practices and say, by the way, if I don't get enlightened in this life, then next life, take me to this place so that I can quickly become enlightened. But from time to time, you have stories of individuals who say, yes, there's that option, but no, I'm not going there. I'm sticking around here. Sort of the idea of, if all the good people are going over there, what's left here? So this cannot, and this position cannot be done out of like conceit. Like, oh, I'm going to be the hero. It has to come from really saying, no, I will stick around. Even though it's really hard here. Yeah. Even though people here are really unreasonable, I'm not going to give up. So in this contrast, right? The most famous Buddha with the most famous Pure Land is Amitabha, again, that name that you already encountered, right? Avalokiteshvara's teacher, Amitabha, his land, his existence is said to be in a place called the happy place, Sukhavati, literally the happy realm. And many Buddhists, would say, oh, may I be born in this happy realm. And then there is a counterpoint to say, actually, Shakyamuni and his world which is our world, so to say, are for the ones who are really, really, really brave. Hopefully not stupid. It's the place for those who really have the guts. Because it's a lot harder here. It's a lot harder here. So that's also what this story of Princess Moonlight is saying. Her determination is so strong that she says, I'm not going to take the easy way out. I'm going to come back from lifetime to lifetime to train with this kind of a body, this kind of an identity, until I become awake. And even when I'm awake, the forms that I manifest will always be female. So here on this wall, you have small figurines of Tara, and this is known as the 21 Taras, the 21 manifestations of Tara. But in a way, it's infinite. 21 is just a set that kind of became popular over time. Objectively, if you take a historical point of view, not necessarily what the tradition would say, but kind of an academic point of view, the names and the identity of these 21 Taras reflected a kind of Buddhist way of being spiritual parasites, meaning it absorbed local Indian traditions of goddesses and brought them all into the Buddhist fold. Yeah, so in that particular area, they worship a particular goddess. I hesitate to call Hindu because in your mind, if I use that word, you think, oh, there's a group of people who are Catholics, and then there's a group of people who are, Methodist, and the Methodists have pilfered something from the Catholics. But in India, before you're anything else, you're Indian. Unless you have converted to monotheistic traditions that say you worship nothing but this one thing, this one God. Otherwise, if you are not, in other words, like Christian, Muslim, or Jew in the Indian context, then any and all gods, goddesses, and in between is fair game, and it belongs to everyone. Yeah. So it's not like, there are Buddhists sitting over here and going, yeah, let's go steal some Hindu goddesses and make them Buddhists, No, it's just what people relied on. So different areas in India have different goddesses. And this Tara principle went about in a way absorbing them and say, actually, their true identity is this Tara. So here Tara becomes, I would say, a principle. And that's how I think we can relate to Tara, even if you're unfamiliar with Tara mythology. Or even if you think the Tara mythology is too Indian, I don't know what to do with, right? Then within your own context, there are these mother goddesses, whether explicitly or implicitly. Even in the Jewish tradition, Sophia, God is, kind of very clearly identified as masculine and monotheistic, but then even in the Jewish and Muslim tradition, the wisdom aspect of God is often expressed as female, which is actually very interesting, and that's also in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, wisdom is associated with female. Compassion is associated with male. Maybe you could say they're trying to balance things out, but maybe there's also a simpler explanation. It's like the doers, those seen outside the home. They're in the public domain, men. Women are usually in that culture, not in the public domain until recently. So these, I think, characterizations, once we understand the kind of historical conditions, we don't need to be locked into it. Yeah, male female then becomes very fluid and pliable, so that we don't need to be wedded to it and get stuck in it. But as Princess Moonlight says, given that the world has such delusions, I'm going to go do the opposite. Not just as protest, but also to remind people the absurdity of your categories. That was also part of her, the meaning of her action. And in that way, she cut through fear and hope. That action was basically her saying, I understand how fears and hopes come about. I'm going to break this. So this is the principle that Tara embodies. And this is the principle we want to learn about and connect. And then you need to do your translation. I always like to say, translation is not just, from one language to another. That's just the beginning of the work of translation. Translation is happening on all levels, and we all need to do this translation. Even within your own culture, you are translating, right? Tradition with a capital T into what it means for me now. Right? Where did I hear this? It's funny, but also true. Tradition is nothing but peer pressure from dead people. Should I repeat that again? Yeah, tradition is nothing but peer pressure from dead people. And then you're like, peer pressure? I'm not dead yet. Yeah, exactly. On the one hand, when we do the work of translation, we have to be humble. Humility is necessary. But in the context of that humility, remember this funny definition of tradition. Then it will proceed nicely. Yeah? And then especially when we're translating across cultures, then yes, please, a little bit more of humility would be good. Because it's not ours, so to say, on that relative level. But the idea here is that there are these universals that speak to us nonetheless, that can cut through place and time. Then there's another level we say that you are interested in this particular expression, this particular set of symbols, this particular set of ideas is not without its causes and conditions. And that is when we move into a more religious mode, if you want to call it that, or more woo-woo mode, which is we say, these are things that come from previous lifetimes. I've met people who have never seen anything, like a Buddha, from friends who are like, from the baby boomer generation. They're like, never seen anything. But I was 4. I went to an uncle's house. There was a Buddha that someone had picked up in their tour of duty somewhere in Asia, and looked at it, and then from the time I knew. I never connected with my family's religion. I knew that I'm connected to that. Yeah, I've met people like that, friends. I mean, what to say? From a secular, materialist-based culture, we would say, oh, it's just a particular way that these chemicals are firing in your brain that resulted in that, But the Buddhist explanation is, no, these are karma from past lifetimes. Connections that were made from past lifetimes. And that you've come back and a recognition happens. So, questions or comments? Yes. And I will repeat. So, when in the temple, if you are asking questions, I will try to repeat your questions so that our friends who are with us on Zoom, and there's a good number of Zoom friends. Actually, you are the majority. We are the minority. Huh? Oh, okay. Well, then we need a runner. Yeah. So, okay, be disciplined about it. We'll have a runner over there. Yeah.
A little.
Yeah, just speak into it. It's for the Zoom people, not for the room. Yeah.
A little hesitant to ask this, but I know this. You just explained the story as a story of Tara.
Mm-hmm.
What makes her different from a bodhisattva? I mean, her choice was definitely different, but
A bodhisattva is just a type of being, right? Someone who has committed to become Buddha. So in that sense, Tara is a bodhisattva, at least in the telling of that story. Yeah. Are you asking something more, or?
no.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Then, yeah, that would be the answer.
Long answer, but
Huh? Yeah. I mean, that would be the answer, unless you're asking something that I'm not catching. Okay. Yeah. In that story, that's the example of a bodhisattva and the bodhisattva act. One of my teachers said that actually the most distinctive qualities of bodhisattvas is what? If you know the answer, don't answer yet. Ordinarily, you say the most distinctive quality of a bodhisattva is what? Ordinarily. So you don't have to commit to saying, I said, and then I'm going to tell you wrong. Ordinarily, you would say the most distinctive quality of bodhisattva is what? Come on. Huh? Compassion, right? Oh, compassion. Actually, one of my teachers said, no, the most important quality of the bodhisattva is guts, bravery. You have to be really brave because you're committing to doing the almost impossible. You have to be brave. Strong. Tough. It doesn't just happen overnight, you build that up. That's the karma. The karma of a bodhisattva. You build that up. But pay attention to building that up. Building up that strength. Building up the courage. Yes?
Yeah, I have a question in response to that.
Sure.
How does that bravery correspond to faith, or does faith
Sure,
really matter?
absolutely. Yeah. Faith is, there can be very technical definitions of faith, in the context of a bodhisattva life, yeah. Then this faith we're talking about having confidence in it can be done. It has been done. I will do it again. That's like the most basic kind of confidence of faith. Yeah? Then if you are capable of having faith in another way, which is faith in, I'm not doing this all alone, you know, that there are beings who are also committed to this, and they are looking out for me, you know. And of course, that kind of faith may be harder for some people, or maybe not. I don't know. If I'm in Asia, I can just assume, oh yeah, you believe that. Here, I don't know. But yes, so there is a important text in East Asian Buddhism related to the Bodhisattva's way. But it's not such a long text. It's called The Awakening of Faith. The longer title is The Awakening of Faith in the Great Vehicle. The Great Vehicle being the way of Bodhisattva. And so various kind of nuances of the word faith is kind of addressed in that text. Yeah. And it's faith in the Buddha mind as kind of the starting point. And that the Buddha mind is our true nature. And the Buddha mind has the following qualities. And you need to trust, in a sense, that your mind, your nature has those qualities. And then and it is about, to some degree, a willingness to suspend disbelief. And so that is where it maps up to faith as you may see in other religions. But it's not towards like some figure, but towards like saying our nature has these qualities. It's not so hard to believe, we would say, if you pay attention to. I have sensed this. I have tasted this. I have felt this. And making that connection and say, oh, yeah. Yes.
So this may be more of like a historical question.
Uh-huh.
Since like you made a point earlier about Tara being associated with a star and used as like a
Yes.
guiding point
Yes.
in ancient India.
Yes.
So, and then what you said about the 21 Taras being like almost like a parasitic, like absorption of goddesses.
Mm-hmm.
So was Tara venerated as a goddess before? Or like what came first, I guess, like was she already a concept to people before Buddhism spread? Was she already venerated before that?
I mean, the name certainly appears a lot earlier, I mean, it's the chicken and egg thing, So, yeah, I mean, did compassion come first or Buddhism? Well, it depends on what you think Buddhism is. If you think Buddhism just started with Siddhartha, then no, compassion came first. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, sure. So we can unmute and invite, and your Zoom team can. So we have some Zoom questions. Okay, go ahead.
Should I ask, is this okay? Okay. I am wondering, is there a word in Tibetan for safety, and what is true safety in this context of Tara and Buddhist understanding?
Jesus said, "Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free."
Mm-hmm.
That's the safety. So seeing things as they are rather than seeing things as they appear to be. We say that's the ultimate Tara. The relative Tara rescues us from the 8 fears. But the ultimate Tara saves us, so to say, from delusions. Yeah, so that's yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Oh yeah, on the like the previous like maybe previous forms of Tara, there is a Hindu Tara, but she seems a little more like Kali, like in how she's depicted in the thing. She's kind of a dark that usually has a sword in her hand, that sort of a thing. And I was kind of wondering if there was any connection as well between that Hindu
Indian.
Tara and
Indian.
yeah, India.
Yes. And Buddhism came from India. Yes. Yeah. No, there are certainly you could trace, how this Buddhist figure of Tara, so to say, came about. And then, yes, legitimately, you could say there's Hindu versions of Tara. Are we talking about the same or different? I mean, I don't know. You got to sit the 2 goddesses down and say, are you the same or different?
Maybe just the same name, but
Yeah, I mean, bunch of Johns, right? I mean, even in the Catholic Church, how many saints are called John? Like, are they the same John or a different John? But curious minds wants to know.
yes.
So I wrote a graduate paper about the Hindu and Buddhist Tara.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh well.
It's dated now, so useless. So don't read it. That's the whole point of scholarship, is to become useless at some point. So that, with more recent discoveries and more recent understandings, you become obsolete. That's good. Yes. Uh-huh. Thank you.
So Lawrence asks, are fear and hope mental formations
Can
as
people
referred
hear
to
you?
in the chain of dependent origination?
Can people hear you?
Yes.
No, in this room?
Okay. Speak louder. Or put myself over the speaker. Are fear and hope mental formations as referred to
No,
in the
no, this
chain of
is
dependent
worse.
origination?
There's an echo going
Yeah,
on.
well, whatever.
No, you have to look up and speak to the audience.
Are fear and hope mental formations as referred to in the chain of dependent origination?
Oh, who knows? Yeah, you could say that. It's a technical question about the logistics of what comes first in Buddhist psychology. Yes, sure. Mental formations. Yes.
And next one,
Uh-huh.
Carolina asks, Carolina, hi, my question is about the relationship between hope and fear. I had always thought that hope was a good thing, something that helped us keep going. It was a way to face our fears, to hold on to hope in order to confront them. How are they two faces of the same coin?
Yeah. How are they 2 faces of the same coin? Is it not exactly 2 faces of the same coin? I think I said one needs the other. And when you have one, the other is not far. So we'll be talking more about that. Now we're just sketching out the contours of this landscape for today and tomorrow. Yeah. But we'll talk more about that.
And finally, Rita asks, hope and faith, difference?
You can make it the same if you want. You can make it different if you want. faith, confidence. Yeah. Anyway. In the Buddhist context, even the best things, we say, they are composite. Right? And to say that they're composite don't make them better, like better. It's not a real word. Don't make them worse, or don't make them better. It's just how it's constituted, That's basic Buddhist teachings. Everything is interdependently arising. Even our perception of a Buddha is interdependently arising. There has to be a Buddha figure capable of being perceived. But if the perceiver don't have the right conditions, then it's not a Buddha. Many people alive during Siddhartha's time, living in the same area, in the same neighborhood, thought he was just another guy walking around looking for a free lunch. They weren't wowed by him. So they didn't have the necessary conditions to experience the presence of a Buddha. Yes?
Two different places here.
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence follows up saying, also, I've read that with respect to enlightenment, there's no difference, no fundamental difference between men and women.
Yeah. Sure. As I said, on the ultimate level, but then we are in relative reality. Yeah. So how does that all play out? Well, it's not so easy. It's not so straightforward. Yeah. And there's no one simple answer. To remain in the, I would say, to remain in the space of not knowing. It's sometimes fruitful. So if we, we say, lean too far in the direction of the absolute truth and light, then it says we have become biased that way. Then if we lean too far in the direction, in the direction of relative truth, then we also have gone in the wrong direction. The middle way is, the Buddha's teachings is always called the middle way. The middle way is not the moderation way. Like, don't be so extreme. Just do everything in moderation. No, that's not the meaning of middle way. Buddha's teachings. Buddha's teachings of middle way is that you cannot just stay on the absolute side of things, and you cannot stay just on the relative side of things. You have to be suspended in this space where the absolute and the relative becomes inseparable. As words, they are easy to say. As a lived experience, not so easy. But also not so hard. Yes. Uh-huh.
Can you raise your hand higher?
No, it's a virtual hand. And so somebody tell virtual people what to
Maria
do.
Elena Palacios, you can speak now.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Dr. Lopez. My question is, what are the 8 fears that you mentioned at the beginning?
Oh, it's in the text. We're not there yet. Yeah. But it's in the text. Yeah.
And also, Astrid asks, the book is a way, or sorry, Yes. She's asking the book you're speaking of, Awakening of Faith, the classic exposition of Mahayana Buddhism by Ashvaghosha.
Yes. Many different translations exist for that. Yeah. If you look at page 2 of this document, this little handout, that is a very famous prayer that one of these great figures in Indian and Tibetan Buddhism called Atisha Dipankara. Dipankara was his actual kind of formal monastic name, and in Tibet he's known as Atisha. And Atisha is one of the famous devotees of Tara. In fact, it's very interesting. In ancient India, at Nalanda University, Vikramasila University, these are the like kind of the Oxford and the Cambridge of ancient India. People came from all over the known world to study and to debate and to teach at Nalanda and Vikramasila. And so some of the greatest minds of Indian culture, basically, beyond Buddhist, were teaching and operating in Vikramasila and Nalanda. And there's one particular branch of like specialization, which is logic and debate. And because India had a diverse like religious population, and so this art of debate and logic, a certain consensus came up where you have to conduct religious debates with a certain set of accepted premises that is not tied to religious identity. So the Buddhists also learned that in order to debate Hindus, and Hindus of various types. When we say Hindus, there's a whole diversity of what Hindus are. Like the one scholar of Hindu religion said, some Hindus are polytheists, some Hindu are monotheists, some Hindus are atheists. So it's a whole zoo of Hindus in there, okay? So anyway, so some of these figures, they debate, and when they debate, like everything to do with like faith, devotion, all that goes out the window, right? Because you cannot like make a point about your position by invoking belief, because whoever you're talking to don't believe that. Right? You also cannot like quote your scriptures to make your point. Which is why, when missionaries knock on my door, I'm just like, first of all, I don't accept your book. You can't just quote your book to try to convince me. That's not working. But the Indians understood this, So they developed some kind of, you could say, common agreement, But many of these like great figures, at least in the Buddhist family, were said to be devotees of Tara in a very kind of heartfelt, emotional way. And so they kind of switched their modes of. And Atisha was one of them. And so he composed this invocation. Om. Homage to you, lady who protects from the 8 fears. Homage to you, lady who blazes with the splendor of auspiciousness. Homage to you, lady who closes the door to lower rebirths. Homage to you, lady who leads us on the path to higher realms. You are the one who holds us always in your care, our guide, support, and friend. So protect us still, we pray, with all of your vast compassion. And so the notes here say, it is well known that while precious Lord Atisha was traveling across the great ocean to meet his teacher Sir Lingpa, so Atisha lived in northern India, And it's said that he made this really dangerous journey by sea to Southeast Asia, specifically what's today Indonesia, and met one of his important teachers in Indonesia. So when on one occasion the ship was in danger of sinking, he spoke these words of prayer. As a result, Tara appeared to him directly and saved them all from peril, saved them all from dangers. So the dangers of drowning is one of the 8 fears, one of the 8 dangers of drowning. So just to call your attention, this particular prayer, most Tibetans grew up memorizing this. Yeah. I've also shared the story of how one of my professors in graduate school, one time somebody asked her, are you Buddhist? That's like a question that you don't ask. It's the don't ask, don't tell of academic study of religion. You don't ask the person, do you believe in what you're specializing in, But some offender actually asked that question during one seminar. And it's like everyone fell dead silent, Not just not just a drop of a pin, a drop of a hair, we could hear it, And then the professor goes, I thought I was. We're like, what? Now that's getting interesting. Yeah, she said, well, I thought I was. And we're like, you want to explain? She said, yeah. She said, I thought I was until one time, she said, I was going home to go see my parents, flying to Seattle, and suddenly the plane dropped, and she said, what came out of my mouth was Hail Mary. It wasn't the Tara prayer, she said. She said, that was when I realized I'm not Buddhist yet, at least. Because in extreme danger, it was Hail Mary that came. What we want to do now is to take a short break. Here, the time I have is 11:40. We will reconvene at noon. Okay? There's